The last video introduced Schubert's string quintet and Beethoven's string quartet number 14. It is a rather special video in that Beethoven's quartet was the composition requested by Schubert on his deathbed, while Schubert's quintet was later chosen by a number of musical luminaries on their own deathbeds. I uploaded the introduction of the video to the AI software Notebook LM. It came back with their comments, which are quite interesting, and I would like to share them with our listeners. Here is what they call their deep dive.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different.
Yeah, a little morbid, you could say.
Well, I mean, we're all going to face it someday, right? The big sleep.
That we are, so I guess it's worth thinking about.
Exactly. So today's deep dive is all about deathbed music. We're going to be looking at two pieces in particular that were requested by some pretty famous composers as they were, shuffling off this mortal coil.
And these weren't just any composers. We're talking about the heavy hitters, Franz Schubert and Ludwig van Beethoven.
Yeah, talk about setting the bar high.
Yeah.
So the story goes that Schubert, on his deathbed, specifically requested to hear Beethoven's string quartet No. 14. And to get this, years later, other composers asked for Schubert's string quintet in C major to be played for them in their final hours.
It's like a musical chain letter of doom. I mean, what is it about these two pieces that makes them so well suited for those final moments?
That's what we're here to figure out, right?
Exactly.
So let's start with Beethoven's string quartet. No. 14. This is late Beethoven we're talking about. The guy who practically wrote the book on dramatic symphonies. What's so special about this quartet in particular?
Well, for starters, this wasn't just any quartet for Beethoven. He actually considered it to be his best work in the genre, like his personal magnum opus.
Wow. Okay, so even Beethoven was impressed with himself.
He was pretty confident in this one. He even said that he discovered a whole new way of writing music that he felt was more imaginative than anything he'd done before.
So the master himself felt like he was breaking new ground with this piece. I bet that made other composers sit up and take notice.
Oh, absolutely. We actually have accounts from Schubert saying that he was blown away after hearing this quartet. He was like, what's even left for us to write after this?
What about feeling the pressure?
Right. And it wasn't just Schubert. Robert Schumann, who was another huge figure in the Romantic era, said that this quartet pushed the boundaries of art itself like it was almost too much for the human mind to comprehend.
So we've got Beethoven pushing boundaries, which isn't really a surprise.
Mm.
But there has to be something more to it.
Right.
Something that makes this piece so profoundly moving that it becomes deathbed music.
Well, on top of everything else, this quartet is deeply personal. Beethoven actually dedicated it to Baron Joseph von Stutterheim, who was the guy who took in his nephew after a suicide attempt.
Oh, wow. Look, there's some serious emotional weight behind this piece.
Definitely. It's like you can hear that gratitude and that sense of loss woven into the music itself.
That definitely gives it a whole new dimension. But we can't forget about Schubert and his string quintet in C major. This piece has been described as sublime and full of bottomless pathos.
Yeah, pretty heavy stuff.
Was it just sad music for sad times, though?
Not at all. It's considered one of the greatest pieces of chamber music ever written. It's definitely full of emotion, but it's not all doom and gloom. For example, the second movement is a really interesting one. It's an adagio, which means it's slow and expressive, and it has this unique structure.
Okay, so how do we wrap our heads around this adagio? What's so special about it? Help us out here. Okay, so how do we wrap our heads around this adagio? What's so special about it? Help us out here.
Well, imagine a musical conversation where Schubert presents an idea and then he kind of explores all these contrasting emotions. It's like he's turning the idea over and over in his mind, and finally he returns to the original theme, but it's changed. It's like finding peace after a long struggle, you know?
Yeah, like a sense of resolution.
Exactly.
It sounds like both pieces, Beethoven's quartet and Schubert's quintet, are tapping into these deeper human experiences. It's more than just pretty melodies, right?
You got it. Both pieces are dealing with these big themes: life, death, love, loss, the meaning of it all. It's like they're wrestling with the human condition. And maybe that's why they resonated so strongly with these composers at the end of their lives. They were facing the ultimate unknown.
It's interesting, though, Because when we talk about deathbed music, you might expect something somber and resigned. But that last movement in Schubert's quintet, the one that's like a wild, joyful dance, that doesn't exactly scream giving up, does it?
That's what's so fascinating about it. It's not about giving up, it's about finding a different perspective, maybe even a sense of transcendence in the face of death.
Transcendence.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Couldn't it just be that these composers wanted familiar comfort, a sense of peace and beauty at the end? What makes you think there's something more spiritual going on?
It's a good question. And honestly, we can't know for sure what was going through their minds. But these guys dedicated their lives to music, to pushing boundaries, to exploring the full range of human emotion through sound. It's not a stretch to think that their final musical choices reflected that same impulse, that same desire to reach beyond the ordinary.
So their music is like a bridge between the finite and the infinite.
I like that.
Yeah.
And maybe listening to it allows us to walk across that bridge too, even if it's just for a little while.
Okay, I can get behind that. But here's another question. We've been focusing on why these composers chose these pieces on their deathbeds. But what about us? What does it mean for the average listener who isn't facing their final moments? Why should we care about this connection between Beethoven and Schubert?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is simple. It reminds us of the power of music, its ability to move us, comfort us, challenge us, make us feel more alive.
So it's not just about the technical stuff or the backstory, it's about the emotional experience, right?
Exactly. It's about letting the music transport us to another place, to feel those deep emotions that connect us all.
Okay, I'm sold. So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for our listener who's been following along on this deep dive? And they've all got a soundtrack to our lives, right? Songs that make us happy, songs that make us cry, songs that bring back memories.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what we're talking about here is a little different. It's about the music that speaks to our souls. You know, the music that makes us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Like the kind of music that might even make us rethink our own mortality.
Maybe even help us come to terms with it, you know?
So it's not just about finding music that we like, but finding music that really speaks to us on a deep level.
Exactly. And what's so amazing is that this music is out there for everyone. It doesn't have to be Beethoven or Schubert. It could be anything.
There's like a musical treasure hunt then.
Exactly. And the best part is there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about what moves you personally.
I don't know about you, but I'm already thinking about what my own deathbed song would be.
Well, I'm not going to pressure you to share it on the air, but it's a question that I think we could all benefit from asking ourselves. What music would we want to hear on that final journey? What music would help us make sense of it all?
It's a pretty heavy question.
Yeah.
But it could lead us to discover some amazing music along the way.
Absolutely. There's always something new to discover, something that can surprise us and move us. And that's the beauty of music.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to you for joining us today and sharing your insights.
It's been a pleasure talking music with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We hope this deep dive has given you something to think about and maybe even inspired you to go out and discover some new music. Until next time, keep those ears open and those deep dives going.